First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here and your families that have come with you, and we'll go through that. You're more than welcome to introduce them when we get to that point. I have an opening statement to make, and then I'll go to my friend here, John Barrasso, to make his opening statement too. We're going to meet today to consider 3 pending nominations. The 3 nominations are David Crane to be the Undersecretary of Energy for Infrastructure. We have Jeffrey Marudian,
sir.
Marudian, okay, thank you, Jeff. To be an Assistant Secretary of Energy for Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. And Jean Rodriguez, is that close?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. To be an Assistant Secretary of Energy for Electricity Delivery and Energy Reliability. So we welcome all of you, and we welcome your families too. Our first nominee, David Crane, has been nominated to be the Undersecretary of Energy. By law, the Undersecretary performs the functions and duties prescribed by the Secretary. Secretary Gramholm has given the Undersecretary the responsibility for managing the Department of Energy's demonstration and deployment programs authorized and funded through the Energy Act of 2020 and the last year's Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. Mr. Crane brings to the job years of experience as a business leader, having served as the CEO of NRG Energy, one of the nation's largest power companies. In this role, he will be overseeing several demonstration programs that I know are very important to members of this committee, including for carbon capture, advanced nuclear, hydrogen, and a lot more. I look forward to hearing about how you plan to implement these critical programs if confirmed. Jeff, who has been nominated to be the Assistant Secretary of Energy for Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. Jeffrey brings an extensive experience managing transportation programs, both at the U.S. Department of Transportation as the Assistant Secretary for Administration and as the Director of the District of Columbia's Department of Transportation. More recently, he has served as a Special Assistant to the President of the White House Office of Presidential Personnel, and for the past 2 months has been a Senior Advisor in the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. He has had extensive experience managing governmental programs and construction projects. Though he has only recently been involved with energy programs, I will be interested to hear his thoughts on the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy and how he plans to apply his managerial skills and experience in his new role. Mr. Rodriguez, who has been nominated to be the Assistant Secretary of Energy for Electricity Delivery and Energy Reliability. The Assistant Secretary for Electricity oversees the Department's Electricity Office, which is responsible for developing new technologies to strengthen and modernize and improve the electric grid. I expect Mr. Rodriguez knows something about the grid, having spent 23 years working for the Southern California Edison, one of the nation's largest investor-owned utilities. More recently, he has been the Vice President of Market Development in the Energy, Environment, Infrastructure Division of the ICF International. All 3 of these positions oversees important portfolios at the Department of Energy. They have been made even more important with the additional authorities and funding that we have given the Department in the Energy Act of 2020 and the Infrastructure Act last year. I appreciate all 3 nominees for being with us this morning and for their willingness to take on and serve in these important and demanding positions. I look forward to hearing from each of you about your qualifications and how you're going to discharge the responsibilities if confirmed. And at this point, I'll recognize Senator Barrasso for his opening statements.
Well, thanks so very much, Mr. Chairman. First, Mr. Crane has been nominated for Undersecretary of Energy for Infrastructure. He has been deciding where to put dollars to work in the energy sector for decades. He's largely focused his career on directing investment away from energy that is available when we need it. And he has directed investment toward energy that is dependent on the weather. That's the wind and solar. Most notably, Mr. Crane spent 12 years as CEO of NRG Energy, a leading company in the power sector. In a 2016 interview, he openly talked about how he was, quote, fired from that position. During his tenure as CEO, Mr. Crane attempted to shift NRG's energy electric business toward wind and solar and away from natural gas and coal. According to the New York Times, he was fired after the company's share price dropped 63% in a year. Mr. Crane later explained at a solar industry conference, quote, we were taking the profits from the coal plants and plowing them into solar development, and at the end of the day, that got to be annoying to the shareholders and the board of directors of the company. Since being fired by NRG Energy, Mr. Crane has called for, quote, name and shame activism against companies that don't subscribe to his ideology. In 2017 essay he wrote on the Green Dream, he argued for the power to reallocate the energy budgets of the world's 100 biggest companies. He would have mandated that they be carbon neutral by 2025. He sought power over, quote, laggards and recalcitrants. He wanted to make employees personally responsible for their company's carbon emissions. Where did prices for consumers fit into this daydream? Nowhere. President Biden recently stated that he will be, quote, shutting down coal plants all across America. Mr. Crane appears to be marching in lockstep. American families need affordable and reliable energy. Millions have been forced to decide whether to fill up their tanks with gas, heat their homes, or put food on the table. The Department of Energy's Undersecretary for Energy Infrastructure must support affordable energy. That requires an all-of-the-above energy strategy. And I'm concerned that Mr. Crane may be the wrong person for the job. Mr. Marutian has been nominated to serve as the Assistant Secretary for the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy at the Department of Energy. The office constitutes the largest applied energy office at the Department of Energy. Among other duties, the office develops and implements mandatory energy efficiency standards for household appliances, such as dishwashers and water heaters. For just over 2 months, Mr. Marutian has been a senior advisor in the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. Before that, he served at the White House Office of Presidential Personnel as the director of the Washington, D.C.'s Department of Transportation, at the U.S. Department of Transportation, and at the Democratic National Committee. His background has little to do with the office to which he has been nominated to lead. It's unclear why he was nominated to a position at the Department of Energy instead of the Department of Transportation. Mr. Rodriguez has been nominated to be Assistant Secretary and lead to the Office of Electricity at the Department of Energy. Since 2014, he has been Vice President in the Energy, Environment, and Infrastructure Practice Group, a consulting firm. I'm interested in learning more about his plan for ensuring the nation's electric sector is secure, reliable, and affordable. Look forward to hearing from the nominees today, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. The rules of the committee, which apply to all nominees, require that they be sworn in connection with their testimony. So if you all would stand and raise your right hands. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give to the Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please be seated. Before you begin your statement, I'll ask 3 questions addressed to each nominee before the committee. Will you be available to appear before this committee and other congressional committees to represent department positions and respond to issues of concern to the Congress?
Yes, Chairman.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Second, are you aware of any personal holdings, investments, or interests that could constitute a conflict of interest or create the appearance of such a conflict should you be confirmed and assume the office to which you have been nominated by the President?
No, Chairman, I'm not aware.
No. None, Chairman.
Thank you. Final. Are you involved or do you have any assets held in a blind trust?
No, I do not.
No. No, I do not, Chairman.
Thank you. So let us begin with our testimonies now. So we'll start with Mr. Crane. You're recognized to give your statement.
Chairman Manchin, Ranking Member Barrasso, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. Having had the benefit of a long career, I can tell you that my path was set by the twin oil crises of the 1970s. I believed then, as I believe now, that the United States is the greatest, most judiciously powerful nation on earth, and it troubled me deeply that our country might be compromised through our dependence on foreign sources of a single commodity. I subsequently wrote my college thesis on our potential vulnerability of foreign dependence on sources of other strategic materials like magnesium or cobalt. It is a concern and fascination with essential commodities that remains important to me and relevant to this day. While I have worked as a lawyer, a developer, and as an investment banker, I spent the greater part of the first 15 years of my career developing and financing new power plant construction. In 2003, I became CEO of NRG Energy and grew a previously bankrupt company over the next 12 years to become the third largest power generation company in the United States with 50,000 megawatts of generation. I'm very proud of the company we built at NRG. We achieved top decile safety performance and top quartile reliability. We took care of our people, not laying off a single employee during the Great Recession of 2008, 2009. We strove always to be a good neighbor in the communities which hosted our facilities, and most importantly, we took great pride in fulfilling the historic three imperatives mission of the American power industry: safe, affordable, and reliable power to all Americans. A few years into my tenure at NRG, it became clear to me that a fourth imperative was emerging for our industry: decarbonization. This was a particular challenge for our company because of the 50 largest American power generation companies at the time. NRG was the second most carbon intensive, and our baseload coal plants, and very importantly, the men and women who operated them, were the heart and soul of our company. Starting in 2006, we leaned hard into a multi-year, multi-billion-dollar strategy to revitalize our aging generation fleet by scaling the zero-carbon elements of our business, by building higher efficiency natural gas facilities, and by embracing technologies that would extend the life of our baseload coal plants by reducing their carbon intensity. We filed the first NRC permit for a new U.S. nuclear plant since 1979 in 2007. We built a substantial utility-scale solar business. We began the first national electric vehicle public charging network, and we built Petronova, then the world's largest carbon capture project. Many of these initiatives were enabled in part by assistance of the U.S. Department of Energy and catalyzed by the bipartisan acts of Congress, including the Energy Policy Act of 2005. With respect to our existing coal fleet, we invested billions of dollars in back-end controls. But with these plants nearing the end of their design lives, with structural fatigue a real risk, we closed or mothballed several of them. To this day, these shutdowns are the most gut-wrenching decisions I have ever made as a business executive. We made every effort to redeploy our people at new plants across the country, but this provides little solace to the local communities. This showed to me that even in big infrastructure, there's a very human scale impact to what we do. I spent the better part of my career running power companies without, in truth, having any great technical understanding of how electricity is produced. But what I do understand is capital formation and capital deployment in and around the American energy sector. My career experience living and working at the intersection of big capital and big energy projects, in my opinion, ideally suits me for the position you are considering me for today. The newly created Undersecretary for Infrastructure position has one task and one task only, and that is to implement the provisions of the bipartisan infrastructure law consistent with the intent of this Congress. I am ready, willing, and able to serve in that role, and I hope to perform this function in a manner that embodies the classic Midwest values which my parents taught to me to hold dear: decency, fairness, and humility. I hope my service, if confirmed, will validate the trust that the President of the United States and Secretary Granholm have placed in me, and that it will make my family proud. And most of all, I want to thank my wife, Isabella, and my 5 children, Kason, David, Bella, Oliver, and Christopher, 2 of whom are sitting behind me, for supporting me in this disruptive step in our lives and for allowing me to follow the call to public service. Thank you for your consideration of me today. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Crane. Now we're going to hear from Jeffrey. We're on a first-name basis here, Jeff.
I'll take it, Senator. Chairman Manchin, Ranking Member Barrasso, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the privilege to testify before you today and for considering my nomination to serve as the Assistant Secretary for Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy at the Department of Energy. I am humbled by the confidence that President Biden and Secretary Granholm have placed in me with this nomination, and I am enthusiastic about the opportunity, if confirmed, to work with this committee, with my colleagues in the Biden-Harris administration, and with the truly phenomenal team of dedicated professionals in the Department of Energy's Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. My great-grandparents came to this country from Armenia in search of freedom and opportunity. They settled in the New York and New Jersey area where they proudly pursued the American dream. My parents and grandparents instilled in me the importance of not only loving our country, but demonstrating that commitment through civic participation and public service. My grandmother, a New York City public school teacher, and my grandfather, a Navy veteran, exemplified that commitment, teaching me that the most important thing that I could do was to contribute to society through service to my community. It was that example that not only led me to pursue a path in government, but defined the values that I still carry with me to this day as I sit in front of this committee. I would also be remiss if I also did not acknowledge that I am here because of the many LGBTQ+ pioneers that have served in public roles before me. It is because of their leadership and courage that barriers have been broken and I am able to proudly serve my country. I have had the distinct honor of serving in 2 presidential administrations and at the local government level here in our nation's capital. I am grateful to former Transportation Secretary Anthony Foxx for empowering me to serve as an Assistant Secretary and Chief Sustainability Officer during the Obama-Biden administration, and to DC Mayor Muriel Bowser for entrusting me to lead the city's Transportation Department. In these roles, I was tasked with overseeing cross-cutting public infrastructure projects, partnering with industry to deploy new and emerging sustainable technologies, and working to reduce carbon emissions across multiple sectors. While overseeing the District Department of Transportation, I focused on taking steps to lower costs for individuals and families, creating jobs and economic opportunity, fostering innovation, and improving the quality of our environment. While serving as the Assistant Secretary for Administration and Chief Sustainability Officer at the United States Department of Transportation, I oversaw the effort to improve energy efficiency and reduce waste throughout the agency's public buildings and facilities portfolio. I also managed the administration of research and development grants and took steps to improve upon the department's use of renewable power. Having served for much of my career at the state and local level, I am keenly aware of the importance of providing high-quality technical assistance while taking a collaborative approach when working with state and municipal officials. I am also deeply committed to ensuring transparency, being a good steward of public dollars, and being responsive to the issues and concerns brought forward by industry leaders and advocates. If confirmed, I look forward to bringing these principles and lessons learned and the values of public service instilled in me by my family to the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. Thanks in large part to the leadership and work of this committee, the department has more resources than ever before to create jobs, spur innovation, and improve communities across this country. This historic investment will help drive state-of-the-art American-led technology and innovation in our manufacturing sector and improve our energy security and independence, which is critical now more than ever. It will support the department's efforts to fund research in a wide array of renewable technologies with the goal of increasing grid reliability and reducing the monthly costs for everyday Americans. And these resources will strengthen the agency's ability to advance technologies such as battery storage, biofuels, and hydrogen fuel cells that will continue to strengthen America's competitive edge. If confirmed, I look forward to working with my colleagues at the Department of Energy and with this committee to continue to further cost-effective clean energy solutions while making our energy more secure, creating jobs, and catalyzing investment in the American economy. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify before you today. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, and now we'll hear from Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you. Chairman Manchin, Ranking Member Barrasso, and distinguished members of the committee, I thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I feel both blessed and humbled to have been nominated to serve as Assistant Secretary of Energy for the Office of Electricity. My father served our nation as a career soldier and a combat veteran, and my mother left the country of her birth to become a naturalized U.S. citizen. So I fully recognize that the calling to serve our country is not just a civic duty, it is a high honor and a profound privilege. If my parents were still with us today, I know they would be very proud indeed that their son aspires to serve our nation in such an important role. I will focus my testimony today on just 2 key points. First, how the last 32 years of my professional career have prepared me for the responsibility of leading the Office of Electricity. And second, if confirmed, how I would ensure that the office fulfills its critical mission of providing our nation with a secure, reliable, and resilient energy delivery system that provides every American with access to abundant and affordable energy to power our homes, our businesses, and our economy. My life's work within the energy industry has been focused on matters directly related to the mission of the Office of Electricity. For example, during my nearly 24 years at one of our nation's largest electric utilities, I oversaw customer programs that provided resource adequacy, customer affordability, emissions reduction, economic development, and system reliability, including research, development, and demonstration activities on emerging technologies. Following my time inside the utility, I spent the next 8 years in consulting, where I shared my lessons learned with other utilities, with local governments, and with state and federal agencies, including the Department of Energy. And all throughout my 3 decades in the energy field, I have accepted and embraced leadership roles within organizations committed to meeting the energy, economic, and environmental challenges of today while preparing our industry for the future. Each of these experiences, and many more that I won't have time to touch upon today, have indelibly ingrained in me the conviction that for us to be truly effective in navigating the transformational opportunities and the unprecedented challenges of developing a 21st century grid, it will take much more than just the expertise of any one person, or any one agency for that matter. As our energy network becomes increasingly complex and dynamic, we must ensure reliability, resiliency, and security across the entirety of the energy system. And while there are tremendous opportunities for technological advancement, these will be accompanied by uncertainty and vulnerability that must be addressed with equal consideration and urgency. To lead the way, we must now think, plan, invent, invest, and operate in ways that are more collaborative, more inclusive, and more coordinated than ever before. This is why I'm grateful to have earned the trust of a great many of the industry stakeholders who will play an indispensable role in the modernization and decarbonization of America's grid. It has been my privilege to work alongside industry leaders from the Edison Electric Institute, the National Association of State Energy Officials, the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners, the Smart Energy Power Alliance, and the GridWise Alliance, among many, many others. These nonpartisan organizations know me well and have supported my nomination for this important role. Similarly, the bipartisan Alliance to Save Energy recently honored me with their Charles H. Percy Award for Public Service, which celebrates reaching across the political aisle to accomplish results for the benefit of all Americans. In closing, I commit to you that if I am fortunate enough to be granted the responsibility of leading the Office of Electricity, we will remain clear-eyed and pragmatic about assessing the challenges ahead, and we will engage industry and innovation stakeholders alike to work side by side with us as we develop, demonstrate, and deploy solutions for America's energy delivery network. And along every step of the way, we will never lose sight of the imperative to create and sustain good-paying jobs that serve the American people. I look forward to answering any questions you may have, and if confirmed, to working closely with each of you as we make progress on our shared mission of fostering the continued technological, economic, and environmental leadership of our great nation. Thank you.
Let me thank all 3 of you for your testimonies and presentation. If anyone would like to introduce their family members with them, they're more than welcome to do so. Mr. Crane, you want to start with yours? I think you have a few more.
I'd like to introduce my, my cousin Laura, my beloved niece Molly, and my sons Kason and Oliver. Just wanted to make sure they were sitting in that order.
Welcome. Jeffrey.
My family is watching from home today.
Well, thank them. And Mr. Rodriguez?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to introduce my wonderful wife, Becky, who is sitting behind me today.
It's good to have all of you here. We'll start with the questions. I'm going to have, my first question would be, it's pretty simple, yes or no. Do any of you believe that the United States of America can be energy independent within the next 10 years without a robust clean fossil energy program?
No, Mr. Chairman.
No, sir.
No, sir, I do not.
Mr. Crane, I support an all-the-above approach to energy policy and believe in order to ensure energy security that we cannot eliminate fossil, and I'm glad to hear you all feel the same way. And we have to focus on the cleanest way possible to decarbonize. We understand that. The Energy Act of 2020 did that, helped us, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act that we just passed is investing heavily in carbon capture utilization and storage. This included authorizing and funding CCUS demonstration projects with 2 required on coal-fired power plants. In your role as Undersecretary, Mr. Crane, you will be tasked with implementing these programs. You were previously quoted saying the coal industry has missed the boat on its opportunity to decarbonize. Can you explain your views on coal and CCUS in the domestic and global energy mix now and in the future?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. Like you, I believe in all the above. I believe that domestic coal is a fundamental part of the energy mix of the United States. I applaud the actions that Congress has taken, particularly the carbon capture utilization and sequestration, the 45Q, and I can tell you from being in the private sector that those provisions are catalyzing a response that I think is going to be very good for the industry. And finally, and most importantly, and directly in answer to your question, without qualification, without exception, I can tell you that I will implement the coal-related provisions of these bills with the same vigor that I implement every other provision.
That was the final part of my question, so you got ahead of me on that one. I appreciate it, because I was going to say, will you commit to carrying out the CCUS?
Absolutely.
Okay. And I have another one for you, sir. You're currently overseeing an implementation of $9.5 billion in funding to supercharge the hydrogen economy, including $8 billion for several hydrogen hubs. As you know, the infrastructure law requires at least 2 of the hubs to be located in major natural gas producing regions, such as the Appalachia in West Virginia. So we're very excited for this program to be put to good use. It also requires at least 1 of the hubs to demonstrate clean hydrogen derived from fossil fuels. So, although the Department of Energy hasn't selected the winners for hub funding yet, can you talk about the hydrogen hub investment and how it's changed the landscape in terms of the U.S. leadership in hydrogen around the world?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would love to do that. As you said, the hydrogen solicitation is underway, and the first thing I can tell you is that there's been an extremely enthusiastic response from across the country. And you know, as you pointed out, the bill requirements require geographic diversification, fuel input diversification, and end-use diversification. And we're confident that we'll get proposals from around the country that will fit all those needs.
What type of activity are you seeing coming in from the world? I'm hearing so much about what's going on because we're committed.
As it happened, I was recently with some old friends who are involved in hydrogen development in Europe, where the European Union and the UK are being active. And one of the things that they're saying is that multinational companies are actually moving their hydrogen programs to North America because of the actions of this Congress.
Let me say, we're concerned about blue hydrogen also, which comes from gas, okay? And how you all are implementing that, and are you committed to as required by law, to work that one too? Because the green comes from renewables, as we know, but the blue can be green from gas if it's if it's sequestered, correct?
We are absolutely committed to the blue and the green provisions, and once the hydrogen gets into the system, as you know, a lot of it's about the infrastructure that comes downstream from the production of the hydrogen. So again, we will faithfully implement every provision of. The thing
I'm so excited about hydrogen was this, and the reason I've been so doubling down on everything on hydrogen is because we are not, and we would never have to be, dependent on foreign supply chains for energy, because we can produce all the hydrogen, clean hydrogen that we ever need in our country. With that, Jeffrey, I'm going to go to you. You have a background in transportation policy, which is covered by the office you've been nominated to lead, but not many of the other programs central to the office, such as renewable technologies and energy efficiency. I know you've been over-observing in this. Can you talk about your experience, and do you believe that's a hindrance to you? And do we have you in the right match? Because I know you have a lot of skills.
Thank you so much, Senator Manchin, for that question. I believe I was selected for this role because of my experience leading large organizations. The District Department of Transportation is a very large organization, about 1,100 people. For scale, the EERE office is just slightly less than that. And as you noted, the transportation components of DOE fit within the EERE portfolio. In fact, about a third of the entire portfolio is dedicated to sustainable transportation. The newly established Joint Office of Energy and Transportation is within EERE as well. And broadly, there are a number of programs across the energy efficiency and renewable power pillars that require management and collaboration within DOE, with the newly established Undersecretary's office, and across government agencies. Those are the skills that I bring to the table, and that's why I believe I was nominated for this role. And if confirmed, I look forward to working with this committee to implement a wide array of programs.
With that, I'll turn to Senator Barrasso for his questions.
Well, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you doing this. And Mr. Crane, if confirmed, you're going to have responsibility for over $70 billion in appropriations. Also have the authority to loan another $250 billion. This isn't Department of Energy's money. This money belongs to the American people. So when CEO of NRG, you were entrusted with investors' money. According to the New York Times, and I have the article here from August of 2016 that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask to be presented in the part of the record.
Without
objection.
Without objection, sir.
So you lost 63% of the NRG's value in a year, and you were fired. One financial analyst told the paper, "We all believe in renewables, but investors lost confidence in the management team." So in light of your record, why should we believe that you're going to manage the American people's money better than you manage the NRG's money?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I think on the topic of NRG share price actually traded principally in close correlation with natural gas prices, and the 63% reduction you're talking about was actually consistent with other companies in the industry. I think if you look at my track record in terms of investment in big projects, my background in project financing, you look at things like the credit rating of NRG. No one ever lost a dime in terms of investing in NRG debt. So I would say that the type of big projects that you say, because it is a huge amount of money that you're talking about, and it is American taxpayer money. And so I take the responsibility very seriously, and I believe that I've got the skill set and the sense of prudency to be a careful steward of that money.
So in 2016 Green Biz op-ed, you wrote, "The sustainability movement will have to become more aggressive if it is to affect change through business leadership." You explain, your quote, "Enlightened companies will need to withhold their business from companies that don't invest in the future, but are content to seek competitive advantage in consumptive business as usual." So 6 years has passed since you wrote the op-ed. According to the question is about, are today's enlightened companies, which I imagine today would be described as woke companies, are the woke companies, as you define them, sufficiently withholding their business from those who are not enlightened?
I think the point of that article has to do with decarbonization specifically, and it's not saying that all companies in the future have to just buy renewables. Decarbonize fossil fuels, I think, is something that most companies that are trying to do something about climate change, they will buy power from decarbonized fossil fuels. So I don't know the concept of wokeness as it applies to the energy industry is not one that I'm that familiar with, but I do believe that the provisions of the bill that I'm supposed to implement, which will provide decarbonized fossil fuel alongside other renewables, including new renewables like geothermal, I think I think it provides a future that energy consumers will be willing to buy into.
Well, that's a debatable point of what energy companies or energy consumers will be able to buy or willing to buy in. Because my thought is, companies should prioritize reliability and affordability for their users. So, should companies prioritize reliability and affordability when producing energy, even if it means purchasing energy derived from coal or natural gas or oil?
Ranking Member, safe, affordable, reliable power, the three imperatives of this industry have not changed in the 21st century. You are completely correct in that regard. We've just been added this imperative of decarbonization. So I agree with you, we cannot compromise safe, affordable, and reliable power delivered to all Americans.
Mr. Manchin, if I could, on building codes, and building energy codes are state laws. The Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy plays a role in the development of building codes, along with private entities. The Department of Energy has no authority, none, to set mandatory nationwide building codes. Do you believe the Department of Energy should have authority to establish mandatory nationwide building energy codes?
Senator Barrasso, thank you for that question. I believe, first and foremost, in following the intent of the law, and also believe further in state sovereignty and states' abilities to make those types of laws that are best for citizens of those states. And if confirmed, that would be those would be the principles that I would apply.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. And now we go to Senator Heinrich.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Crane, the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations was tasked with funding large-scale demonstrations under the bipartisan infrastructure law to de-risk technologies for industry. So I want to ask you just what metrics you're going to be thinking about to ensure that those large demonstrations are truly addressing the key risks to be able to move those things towards adoption, deployment, scale.
Senator Heinrich, thank you for that question, and your characterization is right. It's mainly big projects within OSET, although we have the $1 billion for rural and remote smaller projects. But on the big projects, I think actually the genius of the law is this hub concept, which I think could be described more as an ecosystem. And one of the things that we're trying to do is, sometimes in the past with DOE projects, we talk about that they have been demonstrate and dismantle, and what we're really looking out for is demonstrate and deploy. And I think a particular area of focus for me, because the DOE's technical strength has almost no limit, but more on the commercial offtake. I mean, these projects not only have to operate, within their ring fence, but they have to be commercially sound. So I would tell you that that's the singular thing I'm focused on, particularly when you look at something like hydrogen, where we're going to ramp up hydrogen production, but we have to look at the demand for hydrogen at the same time.
Yeah, and I think it's not just about the technical aptitude, but then being demonstrated in a way to bankability that industry takes off with these things, right? I mean, that's really the 1, 2, 3, 4 approach to getting this stuff to scale, is showing that it really works, and then that you can build it in a way that is profitable. And then once the loan program office, for example, works with someone to do that step, then the banks and other financial sector players will jump in, and these things will be off and running on their own.
Senator, that's an extremely insightful point. And in fact, we're standing up a small team right now. What I'm very concerned about is the Department of Energy has a lot of negotiating influence, in these public-private partnerships. But what we can't do is structure projects that the private sector would never replicate. Right. So I would tell you, in my 2 months at the DOE, the word replicability has passed my lips more often than it has in my previous 63 years. So that's one of our mantras.
So let's shift specifically to the industrial sector, and how should we be thinking about infrastructure planning and investment to be able to decarbonize the next frontier, which is really heavy industry, cement, glass, aluminum, all of steel, all of those industrial processes that rely on high heat?
The decarbonization of industry, and that's, of course, I think we now have a total of $5.8 billion for that. It's just one of the most exciting things that we have on our plate, and we've been looking at 7 hard-to-abate sectors. And based on my experience, and I was on the board of a steel company before I resigned to come to, is that the key is to go to the heart of the process, where the process, in a lot of heavy industry, thinks that there is no zero-carbon solution for the process heat that's at the center of the core of what they do. And I think with the money that's been authorized for Congress, we can put out demonstration projects that can show that you can create very high temperature, 1,000 to 1,400 degrees centigrade heat, without putting carbon into the atmosphere.
I want to shift to you, Mr. Marutian. EERE has an opportunity to exercise its standard-setting authority in a way that really advances grid efficiency and clears the way for rapid clean energy development. And the department, for instance, could choose to establish an efficiency standard for electricity conductors that promotes the use of modern and efficient advanced conductors across the grid. Reconductoring existing transmission with advanced conductors can double corridor capacity. It can lower line losses. Customers can experience significant savings, all without the decades-long planning challenges that the chairman is all too familiar with. Would you work with my office to evaluate how DOE can promote the deployment of advanced conductors as one of our transmission solutions?
Senator Heinrich, I would be delighted to.
Chairman, I have 4 seconds left, so I'm gonna give back all that time.
Take a look, we'll probably use it when he gets time. Now we have Senator Cassidy.
First, Mr. Crane, the most important question is your wife, Miss Delahousie, by maiden name, from Louisiana. That's a very common Louisiana name, although Isabella is not.
Yeah, my wife is Isabella Delahousie from Crowley, Louisiana.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! You got my vote.
Her mother was the Republican mayor of Crowley, Louisiana, for 8 years.
And is she related to the jockey that did so well?
Not that I know of, but
you ought to claim him. Listen, on a more serious note, again, thank you all for your participation. When negotiating Mr. Crane, when negotiating the bipartisan infrastructure bill, we established a compromise, and that was bipartisan. It was really bipartisan, and it kind of reflected that which folks from the left and the right would agree to. And on clean hydrogen, we struck the agreement as 2 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent per kilogram of hydrogen produced at the point of production. At the point of production. And so this was done to ensure we made progress in lowering the emissions, but to make sure that only emissions within the fence line were being considered. Now, one of the frustrating things is DOE has released draft guidance defining clean hydrogen based upon the full life cycle. That's clearly a deviation from what the infrastructure bill said, which means they're going to get sued, which means all this is going to be delayed. I mean, this is so dadgum predictable, and I hate it when agencies defy Congress. This is literally defying Congress. So, that said, and because of that suit, this is going to have a delayed deployment. I mean, just period. It's going to have a delayed deployment. So, can you explain to me in the role that you're nominated to fill, how you can ensure that the Department of Energy actually pays attention to the letter as clearly written in the law and implements the requirements as written? And will you commit to doing so?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. And to answer your question directly, I will absolutely commit to to look into the matter you're talking about and to do everything to make sure that no roadblocks, develop in terms of the prompt implementation of the hydrogen legislation across the full range of permitting and all the questions that you're talking about. I absolutely commit to do that.
And philosophically, do you feel as if, now this is a philosophical question, do you think that and this is independent because it just helps me, do you think the administration is, because some of your previous writings would suggest you might be sympathetic to this, would be justified in considering the full life cycle as opposed to just the fence line? What are your thoughts on
that? Senator, the full life cycle analysis, which is, as far as I understand, is not the dispositive criteria. It's one factor that's being looked at, but it's very complicated to figure out when you're doing full lifestyle, evaluation of basically any human activity. It's very hard to know where you draw the line. So I don't necessarily believe it's not something to be looked at, but again, I've sensed in my 2 months at the DOI, I haven't actually sensed any desire to flout the will of Congress. In fact, particularly with the hydrogen provisions. I've been in meetings where members of the Department of Energy are poring over every word in the legislation to make sure that the FOAs that go out, meet the intent of Congress. And I commit to you that we will continue to play it right down the middle of the fairway, as Congress intends.
Next, if you will, thank you for that. The United States, if you look at oil brought to the coast of Louisiana for refining, the oil with the lowest life cycle emissions is that which comes off the Gulf of Mexico, the Outer Continental Shelf. And yet this administration has had a reluctance to permit leases, to lease and to permit development of U.S. Resources on federal lands. And instead we're bringing in oil and gas from, or at least oil from other countries, which actually has a higher life cycle greenhouse gas emission profile. Now, it's incredibly frustrating for an administration which claims that it wants to lower emissions to favor products from other countries. By the way, the job's going there as well. So what are your thoughts? Does it make sense that the United States is prejudiced against developing resources in North America, creating American jobs, and having a lower life cycle emission profile, or not, I guess?
Senator, I support the proposition that domestic production is always going to be favored to any foreign source of oil or any other strategic commodity or strategic mineral. I'm not personally familiar with the carbon footprint of oil from different parts of the world, but I accept what you're saying. But I always would prefer domestic over foreign. I would say that part that's not part of my remit. In the undersecretary position is the specific issue of oil and gas drilling on federal lands is.
I understand that.
That's not part of.
But it gives me a
mandate.
sense of your philosophy.
I favor domestic production over foreign. I can't go into too much.
I understand.
I'm from the electricity side of the business, not the oil and gas.
Yeah, but your writing suggests that your vision is greater. So with that, I yield back, and I thank you, and I thank Mr. Delahousie.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Ono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to all of the nominees and your families. To ensure the fitness of nominees for the positions that they have been nominated to, I ask the following two questions of all nominees before any of the committees on which I sit, so I will ask the questions of you. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favor or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature? We'll start with you, Mr. Crane, and just go right down the line.
No, I have not, Senator.
No, Senator, I have not.
No, Senator, I have not.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement related to this kind of conduct?
Absolutely not, Senator.
No, Senator, I have not.
No, Senator, I have not.
Mr. Marudian, Hawaii has set an ambitious standard of 100% renewable power by 2045, and Hawaii has reached nearly 40% renewable power, but our state still relies on oil for most of its electricity. Families and businesses in Hawaii have had to watch their power bills go up along with the global price of oil. Solar power costs have fallen by over 80% in the last decade alone, and renewable power is now the cheapest source of power in most places. That does not even count the public health benefits from reducing air pollution or reducing the costly impacts of climate change. What do you think are the biggest challenges to bringing low-cost renewable power to people, and what will you do to address those challenges if you are confirmed?
Thank you so much, Senator Hirono, for that question. And I think that is the exact right question that we should be asking right now. The team at EERE is focused on doing cutting-edge R&D work to help drive costs of all of these technologies down even further. And the important thing that we need to do is look to scale these technologies, to bring them to the grid and to microgrids in some places, so that we can really expand the accessibility. And that's the work that the department is doing at EERE in conjunction with the demonstration and deployment side of the agency that's being stood up underneath the Undersecretary's office. There's a real opportunity for us to take these kinds of technologies from the lab to the street, as Secretary Granholm has said. And if confirmed, I look forward to doing that.
Do you think we're doing enough to come up with storage, battery storage for intermittent power?
Thank you for that question, Senator. Battery storage is something that the department is very keenly focused on. There are a number of technological applications that are currently being evaluated and partnering with industry to help advance battery storage. That's the key. That's the missing piece for really bringing some of these technologies to scale. And so certainly look forward to working with my colleagues if confirmed on how to advance battery storage.
Thank you. Mr. Crane, I have consistently supported DOE's efforts to not just research clean energy technologies, but to also help demonstrate and deploy those technologies to help ensure that people benefit from energy that is cleaner, more reliable, and more affordable. Given the historic funding that Congress has given DOE in the last 2 years to advance clean energy, I support Secretary Granholm's decision to establish the Undersecretary of Energy for Infrastructure and your nomination. In addition to your other work, you have served on the board of the Elemental Accelerator. I should know this, after all, they are in Hawaii, a nonprofit in Hawaii that is an incubator for clean energy and climate technology startup companies. So I'm really glad that just as my colleague was establishing ties to Louisiana, you have ties to Hawaii. What more should DOE do to help deploy new energy technologies to give people cleaner and more affordable energy in their homes, vehicles, and businesses?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. First of all, and thank you for your support for innovation in this space. And I just want to tell you that amongst the many things I had to stop doing in order to take this job, stepping down from the board of the Elemental Accelerator in Hawaii was one of the most painful decisions. I wept over that because there, you know, and as you know, the accelerator is significantly funded by the Department of Navy. Yes. It's the concept of it's tremendous, is to take these early emerging technologies and demonstrate them, and using an island grid like you have in Hawaii. It's just one of the most remarkable things out there. So after that advertisement for the Elemental Accelerator, I would actually say to you, the direct answer to your question is, I think you and Congress have done everything that you need to do. It's up to us at the Department of Energy to implement with the tools that you put in our you know, in our hands. And so that's the most direct answer I would give. Oh, well, actually, I should say, would love to see some sort of permitting, you know, bill passed, because again, we have all this money, and what I'm very concerned about is we see these meritorious projects, they're ready to go, and then they get hung up on a particular, you know, permit. So if there's one thing I could ask of this Congress, it would be progress on the permitting front.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My time is up, so I will submit my questions for Mr. Marutian and for Mr. Rodriguez, for the record.
Thank you for that last comment, Mr. Crane. We really appreciate your support for the permitting. It's the key to getting everything. If not, going to be a lot of money stranded. A lot of money stranded. It shouldn't be. With that, we are so grateful that Mr. Hoeven and Senator Hoeven is with us today.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Senator. It's good to see you.
Good to see you, my friend. Thank you. Mr. Crane, thanks for coming in yesterday and visiting. As we discussed, we have carbon capture projects underway in North Dakota. Not only a coal gasification plant, but 2 of our large coal-fired electric plants. We also, I didn't mention, at least while I was there, maybe you discussed with some of my staff members, but we also have biofuels plants that are implementing. One already has, another one is in process. So talk to me about how the programs you have, how you intend to deploy them to help us make this happen, not only in our state, but across the country. And there are 3 components to that we've worked very hard to pass, and certainly the chairman's been very involved with that and gets big thanks for it. And obviously this committee, but that includes not only front-end funding to help with the technology that has to be put on these plants to capture the CO2 so that it can be sequestered, also the loan guarantees, and then, of course, the 45Q tax credit, which is really overseen by Treasury, but obviously has to be coordinated with the other programs. So in your job, assure me that you're going to help deploy those programs so that we can accomplish this carbon capture.
Thank you, Senator, for the question and for the time yesterday. I can not only assure you that I will implement those programs, I will implement them with great enthusiasm. And as I know you know, that we've already put out the first FOA for carbon capture, and we're going to be, which is more for feed studies. We're going to be putting out a second one within the next few months for the large-scale projects. And yes, I will implement them enthusiastically. And as we discussed, 45Q is a huge incentive, and I've taken back your concerns about overlapping, programs to see, just what the rules are. But I'm 45Q can be done alongside of our money. It's just the one thing that can't be done by statute is the loan and the grant in the same project. But even that, it's a question of how you define the project.
Right. And you're committed to working on that with us?
I'm absolutely committed to working with you and your staff on that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rodriguez, talk to me a little bit about baseload in terms of grid reliability. Obviously, coal-fired electric provides a lot of that baseload now. That's why we're working so ardently on the carbon capture piece. And as Mr. Crane and I discussed yesterday, this isn't the first rodeo. We've done this with SOx, we've done this with NOx, we've done this with mercury, okay? So now we're gonna do it with CO2, but we need that baseload electricity. What's your role in making sure that we keep baseload electricity in, as part of the mix to stabilize the grid?
Thank you very much, Senator Hoeven, and thank you for the opportunity to meet with your staff yesterday. We had a tremendous conversation. I will say that your question calls out something that's critically important for the American people to understand, and that is the complexity of the energy system. To ensure reliability, which is job number one for the Department of Energy, along with affordability, security, and other attributes, we need a mix of resources that can be used in different ways. Baseload energy is critically important, and that's why I think the work of the department looking to find ways to do carbon capture, utilization, and storage is one of the most important breakthroughs that we can work on today. Within the jurisdiction of the Office of Electricity, what we will be doing is exactly this, ensuring that each and every state's policy decisions, policy preferences, and decisions made about the resource mix that they want to have to serve their constituents, their citizens, that the grid is enabled to take those resources and affordably get them to the American people and do so reliably and safely as well.
And natural gas has a continued important role in that effort as well?
I absolutely believe that's the case, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Maroshin, the EERC Energy and Environmental Research Center at the University of North Dakota, are you familiar with it?
No, sir, I'm not.
Okay, well, they've, for a long time, worked with DOE, particularly on the fossil side, but they've also been trying to establish a relationship with DOE on the renewable piece. How would you recommend that we go about, building that relationship with you, a cooperative agreement type relationship with the EERE?
Senator Hoeven, I certainly would welcome the opportunity to speak with representatives and establish that open line of communication. I think the department, EERE's ability to provide technical assistance to states, to universities, to research centers is key. It's something I'm deeply committed to and look forward to working with your office if confirmed on that. Yeah,
and I would invite you to come to the EERC and see what they can offer, because it's tremendous. And I would actually invite all three of you to come to North Dakota, and we'll be following up with you on that. You might want to come in the summer, but it's up to you. But we definitely want to invite you and get you out there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And now we have Senator Hickenlooper.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks all three of you for your commitment to public service and being willing to go through this kind of interrogation. Let me start with Mr. Marushian, or Marushian. I knew a Marushian when I was younger, but with names like Hickenlooper, I can discuss phonetics. Historically, DOE's national labs such as NRAIL and Golden, which you'll oversee if confirmed, have in many ways been our secret weapon in developing new energy innovations and bringing them to market. Going forward, we're going to increasingly rely on these labs to guide us to some of the energy questions with this big transition. The transition obviously is the importance of getting this mapped out and together is very, very important, whether it's transition build out to simply operating a system that's on a diverse mix of generation sources. So how do you envision using DOE labs and NREL in particular to help inform U.S. industry and policymakers about these questions?
Thank you for the question, Senator Hickenlooper, and thank you for your time last month meeting with me. I agree with you. The national labs, NREL, and all of the 17 labs are the agency's crown jewels. They have the tremendous capacity and potential to do really cutting-edge advanced research and development across the board. And they have a number of really solid partnerships already. I think it's critical that we expand those partnerships with industry and with consumers. And I think about, for example, the Clean Energy Cybersecurity Accelerator as a great industry partnership that's developing real-world, real-time solutions for industry. And I think about things like the Solar App, which is a technology that is consumer-facing, that helps streamline permitting processes for customers who are looking for solar. So I think those are the kinds of partnerships that I would love to work on expanding if confirmed. I've had the opportunity to meet with Dr. Keller several times, along with several of the other lab directors, and very much look forward to working with them.
Terrific, thank you. Mr. Rodriguez, when we spoke, we briefly discussed how electric vehicles might be able to help out in the power sector as we incorporate more variable generation on our the more variable generation on our grid, especially in things like vehicle-to-grid applications. We have a bidirectional act that you are aware of and that would promote these kinds of innovations. With the right incentives in place, it would seem that we could align the self-interest of vehicle owners, of utilities, buses, grid operators, utilities themselves. If you're confirmed, what role do you see for the Office of Electricity in helping to identify and promote the policies and standards and rate structures, all this stuff to really deploy these promising technologies and innovations?
Thank you for that question, Senator, and thank you for taking the time to meet with me. I enjoyed our conversation. I hope we will be able to continue it further. I am absolutely tremendously excited about the opportunity to take advantage of vehicle to the grid, vehicle to everything, all the grid edge resources out there. As we look around us right now, outside these windows, the resource that we have the ability to tap into as soon as we technologically just break through a couple more engineering barriers, it's grid edge resources. And vehicle to grid is one of those. As we discussed the other day, if and to the extent the grid is able to accept these resources, to integrate them, then we will have ways to increase reliability, increase affordability. May I make one last point on that? The Office of the Electricity will be focused on those sorts of technologies and advancements that need to be made to ensure that the visibility of these resources, the controllability of these resources, and as you point out, the very important policies are in place to ensure that consumers recognize the value of being a beneficial part of how we control our grid.
Absolutely, and that won't be easy. Mr. Crane, I saved the best for last. As a recovering geologist, and I think according to Mark Kelly, I'm the only scientist in the Senate, he claims he's only an engineer. I would debate that. But I can't help but ask your perspective on this emerging as geothermal energy becomes more widely accepted. I was interested to see DOE's new enhanced geothermal Earthshot department-wide initiative, which aims to achieve a 90% reduction in the cost of enhanced geothermal projects by 2035. Can you talk about the steps that you'll take, if confirmed, to commercialize promising technologies like that across DOE's agencies, perhaps using Earthshot as an example?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. And while your youth was well spent becoming a scientist, mine was misspent becoming a lawyer. So when we start talking about geology, you have me out of my depth, so to speak. But I think the geothermal Earthshot and the cross-cutting nature across the part of the Department of Energy is very exciting. And the geothermal, very underutilized resource that has more baseload characteristics. And so, the programs that right now it's more in the R&D side of the Department of Energy, but we will support that on the demonstration deployment side wherever and whenever we can.
Perfect. Couldn't ask for more. Great. Thanks you all three. It's the first time I've gotten a question to all three when we've had three people up here. So these are concise answers. This is a direction government needs to move in.
That was because
Because you were so
That was
succinct.
because our resident scientist asked the question.
I doubt that.
Senator Cantwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for this important hearing and all of you for your willingness to serve. These are very important positions, and certainly appreciate the focus that you've brought to this morning's feedback and answering questions. Mr. Rodriguez, I would like to drill down a little more. You and I had a chance to meet, but obviously the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory has been a critical contributor on electricity issues since its inception, and grid modernization, cybersecurity, energy storage, all of those things. They're the home to the largest collection of power system engineers, and will soon be home to the Office of Electricity's new grid storage launchpad, which provides a place to accelerate and vindicate grid storage, grid scale storage. So very, very important. Obviously, we're very interested in smart grid technology and moving forward on the Office of Electricity's support of grid storage launchpad once it opens in 2024. So I wanted to ask you about the investment and time frame, because utility operators and consumers agreed to dynamically control large electrical loads like EV chargers, water heaters, pumps, all of these things that we have to do to drive down cost and look at consumer affordability. I think they released a study that showed if this technology were used across the country, it would cut peak loads by up to 15%, which 15% and deliver $50 billion in economic benefits to customers. So how do you see the grid storage launchpad moving forward on with P&L and helping to roll this out?
Thank you for that question, Senator Cantwell, and again, thank you for taking time to meet with me yesterday. Let me start with a personal story. I've been in the energy industry some 32 years. When I first entered that, some 32 years ago, I remember having a conversation with one of the leads of the utility on the technology side, saying, you know what the next breakthrough is for renewable energy? Storage. And that's because from a utility perspective, the thing that makes these technologies used and useful in making affordable energy and reliable energy for people is the ability to control the portfolio of resources you have. Grid storage, I believe, represents the most important breakthrough our country can make. And the PNNL is fortunate, and we are fortunate that it is the home of the grid storage launchpad. That's going to put not just a good, rigorous technology demonstration work, but intellectually rigorous plus muscular in terms of the size and the breadth of the effort. I'm very excited about the work being done there.
Thank you. Mr., I'm going to say this right,
Rudian.
Jeffrey, if you have to.
Jeff is perfect.
Rudian. Obviously, in the energy efficiency and renewable energy portfolio, P&L is also a big player on renewable grid integration and coastal and marine integration as well. How do you think the role of the National Lab would help in support of these priorities and moving forward on decarbonization?
Thank you, Senator Cantwell, for that question. I've had the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Ashby and very much have confirmed look forward to working with the PNNL team. They're doing some cutting-edge research and work across the board, and I think it's critical that we as a department focus on how to take the R&D work that's being done at the labs and apply it to real-world applications, and look forward to doing that if confirmed.
And Mr. Crane, I understand P&L was one of the first labs you visited in your current role, so thank you. Given the strong capabilities the department has invested in for many years, how do you plan to leverage these investments, particularly, some of the things we need to do on the security side?
Well, Senator, you're absolutely correct. The first national lab I got to visit was Pacific Northwest, and it was truly awe-inspiring. And I think the thing that personally most excited me about my visit was the work that was being done within that lab on next generation electrolyzers, which will be essential to a highly successful hydrogen, particularly if the current. I mean, the current generation of electrolyzers that we're looking at, of course, rely on iridium, which is something that the United States does not have a supply of currently. So, we have to promote, more special metals, domestic sources, but solid oxide electrolyzers, where the work's being pioneered out in Washington State, I think is something we have to focus on very quickly to accelerate and scale up.
I'm not sure you could probably explain it in a short period of time, but I look forward to helping everybody understand this cutting edge change. I don't even, if you have a soundbite, you could say it, but I okay.
No. As
So
a lawyer,
I'm
at the very edge of my technical understanding right now.
I think it could change a lot in manufacturing. I'll just say that. I think it could be a game changer in manufacturing. Could I just, for the record, Mr. Chairman, I know we have people want to ask a second. Sure. Mr. Rodriguez, you and I also had a conversation about grid fiber. The chairman literally pioneered this idea in his state with people working together on grid fiber as a way to drive a smarter grid. And do you think that a program to encourage more utility investment in grid fiber is a good idea?
Thank you for that question, Senator Cantwell. I don't think it's a good idea. I think it's an excellent idea.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for your willingness to step up into some of these key positions. Many of us on this committee were very involved in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Folks in my state are really anxious about how this is implemented, how this law is implemented. We've already seen a great return to our state, and it's no wonder given that we lack significantly when it comes to basic infrastructure, everything from water and wastewater to broadband to things like roads and rails and bridges, ports and harbors, and of course ferries. So we've got a lot of work to do there, and you in your respective positions that you've been nominated to, certainly Mr. Crane, you will be deeply involved in shepherding much of this as we look to upgrade and modernize our nation's energy infrastructure. I don't know the extent to which any of the three of you have had an opportunity to come to Alaska, but I will make a public request to each of you, if confirmed, that you will make the effort to do so. The chairman has been to Alaska numerous times. Senator Heinrich has been, many members of this committee have been up, and I think every time any one of you goes up, you realize how much you don't know about the state, because it is just so vast and its needs are so great. So I'm going to encourage all of you to do just that. Mr. Crane, let me ask you a question regarding critical minerals, and I do think it is timely that I just presented the chairman with, I don't know if it's a gift, Mr. Chairman, but I know it is certainly within the allowable limits. It's a hunk of natural graphite from the Graphite 1 prospect just outside of Nome. But we talk a lot about critical minerals in my state and what that means and why they're so important. Mr. Crane, you've indicated that you think that it is important, in fact, it needs to be a priority to be able to access our resources domestically, not only our energy resources, but as well, and I'm assuming when it comes to critical minerals, you feel that way as well. I've been a little bit frustrated with some of the things that we've seen from this administration. They're saying the right words about accessing our critical minerals, not being reliant on places like China, which we know we're so heavily reliant. But they're saying one thing, and then certainly with initiatives in my state, it seems that they're doing the other way. We're seeing permits being pulled, we're seeing right-of-ways being rescinded, applications for funding being passed up on. So just if you can speak generally to me as the nominee for Undersecretary for Infrastructure, whether you agree that infrastructure for critical mineral supply and processing in this country is important, is lacking. Do you think that accessing is a challenge? And what basically can you do to assure me that there's a plan here to help address our nation's critical shortage when it comes to these minerals?
Senator, thank you for the question. And let me start by saying I completely agree with you that this is an essential area that needs to be addressed. There's no point in just switching from dependence on foreign sources of oil and gas to foreign sources on other technologies where we have this Achilles heel of not, getting the minerals from China. In the Undersecretary Infrastructure, vertical, there is a manufacturing and supply chain office which has been funded with several billion of dollars, which is very carefully looking at this and is going to be identifying areas where we can directly lean in terms of ensuring those supplies. And so I'm extremely supportive of that and will implement that vigorously. And if you don't mind, going back to your opening comment, if I get confirmed and get a chance and get invited, I will come to Alaska. But last month, Secretary Granholm and I spent a whole day with the tribal and indigenous leaders here in Washington. And I know that's not the same thing as actually being on the spot, but I understand the issues of the remote, communities, the energy needs in your area, and there's, I think, a lot we need to do to enable them to access the rural and remote provisions of the bipartisan infrastructure line. I would very much look forward to working with you and your staff to make that happen.
Well, consider yourself invited. In fact, I've already got a place in mind. We'd like to take you up to the North Slope area, and in particular the community of Utqiagvik. There's a facility up there, DOE's research facility at Aliktok Point. It's a great example of how federal and state agencies, as well as students from our university, can benefit from continued collaboration. So we think that assets like this are important to help out our national labs when we think about the scientific initiatives that are underway there. So you are invited as well as the other nominees here. Just very, very quickly, because I don't want to go over my time too greatly, but I did want to ask you, Mr. Manchin, given that your career has focused primarily on transportation issues here in the district, I know you were asked earlier about your qualifications to be the Assistant Secretary here, but I'm looking for a better understanding in terms of what you will do to make sure that you understand what it means to be in a very, very large geographically positioned state with very few people, where for us, it's a microgrid system that is really providing the reliability. It's basically a couple wind turbines synced up with a battery storage that looks like it's nothing more than just a storage shed out there on the tundra. And this is where we have a very unique aspect. So I am hoping, too, that not only you can translate your understanding or your base of knowledge with how these systems work in urban places, but that you've got a willingness, or perhaps you do have some background there that you can share with me very briefly.
Thank you, Senator Murkowski. I see Alaska as truly an all-of-the-above state. I realize the significant resources from oil and gas to wind to hydroelectric to geothermal, and certainly understand and recognize that the rural and remote nature of some communities does make grid access very difficult. It translates into, as you know, higher costs for importing fuel, for example. And I think there are a number of applications, a number of ways that EERE can be supportive of Alaska. Continuing the partnership between NREL and the Cold Climate Housing Research Center for one. Advancing the research and development on a number of technologies that support the microgrid, on-site geothermal, for example, biomass, a number of other types of technologies that can be that can apply on site, and harnessing the state's abundant hydroelectric potential as well. So those are some of the ways that I think we can partner. I certainly, as somebody who comes from a local government background, truly recognize how important it is that place-based solutions be applied, that communities are met where they are. Very much look forward, if confirmed, to working with your office, with the Arctic Energy Office, with the Indian Energy Office at DOE, and certainly look forward to visiting the state as well.
Good. Well, you used all the right buzzwords. Somebody must have just really plugged you in on Alaska there, because we're talking about the need for greater affordability, certainly, but also place-based solutions. And Mr. Rodriguez, I would hope that you too recognize in this position that you've been nominated to, when you're talking about grid deployment and energy reliability, that reliability really is so tightly keyed to affordability.
I absolutely agree with that premise, Senator. And I also would say I view it not just as an obligation of the Office of Electricity to pay attention to and develop ways for Alaska's remote microgrid system to become more reliable, more resilient, but also more affordable. It's a moral obligation that we do our best to ensure that we have technological answers for the needs of your state.
Too many communities still powered by diesel, and they're locked into fuel prices that were set a couple months ago. So I've got communities that are still paying in excess of $10 a gallon for home heating fuel, and they're going to be paying that until the next barge arrives in June. So for us, affordability is key.
You have my absolute commitment that we will give this issue our hardest and most focused attention.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm well over my time, but I think you were writing with your hunk of graphite there.
Just a little.
Thank you.
No problem, but thank you. Real quick, we're coming to an end here. I have just a couple questions. I think Senator Heinrich might have a follow-up question, okay, if I can. So, Mr. Rodriguez, on that, on reliability that we've talked about, you know, your job and your experience with SoCal Edison, I think, puts you in a unique position. You have an important mission focused on grid reliability, resiliency, and modernization. I think we all agree our North American grid is the envy and the marvel of engineering for the whole world. But ongoing changes in the generation of mix that we're seeing with all new technology, outside forces, cyber threats, weather events that test the grid also highlight the importance of a resilient grid, of how we can harden this grid. So what do you view as the most pressing concern for the Office of Electricity to address in that realm?
Thank you for that question, Senator Manchin. I think it's very insightful. I will say this. The number one task, the number one role of the Office of Electricity is to ensure that the American power system, the American grid, is reliable. Because without energy reliability, nothing else matters to the American people. And may I add just one thing to it? The thing that makes me so gosh darn excited about being able to have the opportunity, if confirmed, to work at the Office of Electricity is that the leadership in technology, economics, and environmentalism that our office can bring through the research, development, and demonstration is not just going to help the American people, but it will allow us as a country, as a nation, to help our allies around the world to remain secure and have affordable energy as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Marushin, Jeff, I was determined to get that right before this meeting was up. When it comes to transportation, I think it's irresponsible to put all our eggs in one basket and one single technology. because some may be more viable than others depending on the type of use it's demanded. For instance, when it comes to long-distance trucking, hydrogen may be a more viable option than battery electric vehicles. And I say that because fuel cell systems are traditionally lighter than batteries. Refueling time is faster than using an EV charger. So it makes an awful lot of sense. Since your background in transportation, what are your views on hydrogen use in transportation sector and the applications that are most viable for hydrogen?
Thank you, Chairman Manchin. I agree. I think there is tremendous promise in hydrogen for medium and heavy-duty trucking, to marine shipping, a number of other applications as well. The department has an incredible team working on hydrogen, led by Dr. Sunita Sachapal, and I very much look forward, if confirmed, to working with them to advance these technologies, to help bring the cost down, and also partnering with the Undersecretary's office as the hydrogen hubs get stood up. There's a tremendous opportunity here for us to scale these technologies and bring them into real-world applications.
Well, we're putting an awful lot of investment and a lot of hope into having this alternative fuel, which we think is going to be tremendous for our country. And with that, Mr. Heinrich.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Marutian, the Inflation Reduction Act really provided incredible consumer-facing, cost-saving rebates for energy-efficient electric appliances, things like induction stoves, heat pumps, air source heat pump water heaters. But because these things have been developed in recent years, many Americans are simply unaware of these technologies and what they can mean for their health and their pocketbook. How can your office better educate Americans about the opportunities for better health outcomes and lower costs through home electrification?
Thank you, Senator Heinrich, for that question. It's something that I have thought a lot about, and as a former local government official, I've relied heavily on the federal government for technical assistance, for information, and I know that there are many people who don't have as easy access to that information, and so it is urgently critical that we provide as much information as possible to consumers, that we partner with as many local governments, state governments as possible to make sure that that folks are getting this information so that they understand how they can access rebates and credits, but also so that they have the opportunity to see what available technologies are out there. And so I very much look forward to working with your office on that.
And I would just add contractors and labor. I mean, the first time I installed an air source heat pump water heater, I have a fantastic plumber, and they were like, I don't know what to do with this. And now they're installing those left and right, and they're saving people money, and they love them. So we have to do that education piece if we're going to have uptake in a meaningful amount of time. Mr. Rodriguez, thanks for meeting with me the other day. I know there have been concerns posed by DOE and industry about the lack of domestic manufacturing of large power transformers, the supply chain issues around transformers. What are your thoughts on the need for spurring more domestic manufacturing or even a national reserve of some sort of large power transformers and distribution transformers?
Thank you very much for that question. It is an incredibly important issue for America. In writ large, the issue of energy independence comes down to availability and our ability to make useful and productive use of resources right here at home. Transformers, as we sit here today, have two challenges for them. Number one, without advancements in transformer mechanics, they're built kind of on a custom basis, one at a time, which creates a lag in getting transformers to the grid, especially if you have a resiliency issue where you're trying to recover the system. The Office of Electricity is already doing research and working on demonstrating the notion of flexible transformers that have greater application and can be on the shelf for multiple uses. And I think that's the kind of real-world thinking that the Office of Electricity is already doing that I hope to be able to put even more strategic intent and more focus on.
Great. No, that's a great answer. I want to thank David for articulating that we need resilient, reliable, efficient, I think it was safe, affordable, reliable, and effectively clean, right? We need all of those things at this point. And, you know, one of the technologies we haven't spent a ton of time talking about, and Mr. Rodriguez, we did this a little bit in the office, but given the challenges that we have with transmission and given the challenges that we have with permitting that Mr. Crane alluded to in his comments today, how do we look at dynamic line ratings, advanced conductors, transmission monitoring, topology optimization, power flow controls, and get those things out, given that they're already proven, into the ecosystem so that, yes, we're going to have to build more transmission. We know we're going to have to do that because demand is going to go up. But we can also use these things to buy us time and make a more resilient grid.
Thank you for that question, Senator. It underscores the importance of a common sense approach to dealing with transmission issues. And just as we were talking about an all of the above energy strategy before, we need an all of the above transmission strategy. And one of the key areas, everything that you mentioned, are areas where the Office of Electricity is currently working to do grid enhancement. So you don't have to be delayed by the process it takes to get new transmission corridors permitted, up, and built. That is a long, long time. The American people need faster answers than that. Yep. The grid enhancement technologies that the OE has on its shelf are important for us, and we're demonstrating right now. Part of our conversation yesterday, and I'll be very brief about this, is we need to understand that this is a system of decision makers. It's not just a technology answer. It's about making sure that utilities feel that this technology is certain and credible and will serve their people over the useful life of 20 to 30 years. Regulators need to understand this, the benefits of the system, as do advocates and ratepayer advocates alike. So I view the role of the Office of Electricity as becoming a lot more loud and a lot more engaged in conversations with everyone who's part of the decision-making process for getting technology off the shelves and put to productive use.
Thank you.
I want to thank all of our nominees and thank their families for attending. And we appreciate your being here this morning, your responsiveness to our questions and concerns, your willingness to take on these important jobs and serve our country. I still believe public service is the noblest of all professions, and you all should feel very good about that. Members will have until 6 p.m. tomorrow to submit additional questions for the record, and this meeting is adjourned. Good.